Welcome back, everyone. This is Kat, and we're going to continue working on the Getting to Know You Block of the Month quilt. So this month, we are going to be working on Block 7, Getting to Know Purple. This is a pretty easy block compared to all the blocks we've done so far. You're going to do your cutting, and the cutting's pretty straightforward. I've got all the units that you're going to be cutting. Let me move this over just a teeny bit. I've got all the units that you're going to have cut for your block. I've already taken the seeds triangle and the plum vine triangles here, and I've already sewn them together for our first block. But if you're going to have a stack of the seed triangles, a stack of the plum vine triangles, a stack of the lilac clouds triangles, and then you're going to have your seeds square, your lilac cloud squares, and then you're also going to have that same size square in the purple fireworks. So pretty easy cutting squares, and then you're going to take these squares and cut them 2 times to create your triangle units for the hourglass block. So the first thing we'll do then is we're going to take 2 of our triangles, lay it out per the book so that you make sure you're sewing the right sides of your triangles together. We're making 2 blocks this month, so you're going to be putting all of your triangle units together. You're going to have this unit and this unit. You're going to press the seam allowances towards the plum vine triangle. When you go to pin these together, doesn't matter which one's on top, but you're going to make sure that your seams line up, lock together here. And again, I like to put a pin through the seam allowances to the left of my previously sewn seam. That way, when I put this under the foot, I'm going to stitch 1/4 of an inch down this side. That way, this is going to hold this intersection together until I get through it. So I don't pull these pins until after I've sewn through them. But again, these are those extra fine pins. They won't hurt your machine if you happen to hit one. Once you have those 2 units together, sewn through together, then you're going to just press them open, seams to one side. If you think this one doesn't feel too bulky to me, so I'm probably going to leave it. But if you're concerned about the bulkiness of this unit, then by all means, you can go ahead and press that flat if you want to. So we're going to be making 8 of these hourglass units. And these are going to go these are going to be attached directly to our center square for our block. So I've already got these units, well, for 1 block together. So let's move on then to our second unit that we're going to be working on. And that is going to be the half square triangle units. So we're going to be using the seeds and the lilac cloud for 1 half square triangle. And then we're going to be using the seeds and our, what do they call that, fireworks, purple fireworks fabric for our other half square triangle unit. Notice, I'm going to move all this over so you can see I've done some strip piecing of my half square triangle units. So you're just going to take your 2 squares and put them together. Draw a diagonal line from corner to corner, and then we're going to be sewing 1/4 of an inch down this side and then back up 1/4 of an inch on the other side. I like to just start feeding them into my machine, and I go down one side, then I cut my thread and I turn my string around, and then I start down the other side. So I have these all sewn. So the next thing you want to do is make sure you go to the ironing board and you press these just the way you took them out, because we are sewing down the bias down the center, and sometimes your pieces will start to get a little ripply, and we want to definitely get those fibers back in line before we cut these. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the cutting table, and I'm going to cut these apart. Then I'm going to go press them open to the dark side. Then we're going to go ahead and trim all of these units up to 2.5 inch square. And we're going to make 16 of the seeds background in purple firework, and then we're going to make 8 of the lilac cloud and the seed. And then we'll use these to make our corner triangle units. So I'm going to go cut these, repress, trim, and I'll be right back here, and we'll go ahead and put our corner triangle units together. That's our only other unit that we need to make before we assemble the block. So this is going to be a quick one. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I have a stack of 16 half square triangle units here with my seed background and my fireworks, purple fireworks. Then I have 8 half square triangle units with my seed background and my lilac cloud fabric. So one thing I want to say about making these and trimming them up, you're going to want to sew with a scant 1/4 inch when you're sewing on either side of that center line before you cut these apart. Because that way you're going to have enough hanging over that you can get a nice square 2.5 inch square unit. I pieced these with a scant 1/4 inch unit, and I had just slivers that I could take off from all 4 sides. And I like having a little bit to take off, because that means I'm going to have a really perfectly square unit when I'm done. The thing you don't want to do is, if you're using a large 1/4 inch or a full 1/4 inch, after you've pressed these open and you go to trim them, you're going to have places where you're not going to be able to trim. It's actually going to be smaller than your 2.5 inches. So just make sure that you're using a scant 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on the back so that you can trim them up. But they trimmed up beautifully. So with these 2 stacks, we're going to create our corner triangle units. So we're going to use 2 of our half square triangle units with the fireworks fabric with our background, 1 with our seeds and our lilac clouds, and then we have this lilac cloud 2.5 inch square unit here. So we're going to put these together to create that corner triangle unit. So in the book, she tells us to join these 2 together and then join these 2 together. And you can do it that way, or you can do it this way. It doesn't matter. We have to sew pairs first. So just pick either rows or columns. And then we are going to press the seams in the direction indicated by the arrows. So we'll do it like the book. The arrow is pointing towards our square, which is always a good thing. And because our seam allowance is going to be pressed to this square, then we're going to press this seam allowance in the opposite direction, so it's going to be pressed towards this half square triangle unit. So I'm going to go ahead and make up these units, our corner triangle units, and then we're going to go ahead and lay our block out and get it going. I'll meet you right back here. Okay, I've got my 2 rows together. I'm going to just take and flip this one down over top. My seams are offset. I'm going to lock my seams here again and put a pin in this seam allowance here and go to the machine, and we're going to sew right down there. So let me move the camera and show you what that looks like. And again, I'm going to sew through the pin. I'm going to slow down a little bit just in case I do hit it. If I do, it's just going to bend the pin. I'm going to get all the way to the end here. Go ahead and cut that. Take our pin out and let's look at that intersection. Yeah, that's about as good as you can get. That's why I love, took me a long time to figure that technique out, but it works 99.9% of the time. So this seam allowance really doesn't matter which way you go, because these are not, these are on the outside of the block, so it doesn't matter. But I think on this unit, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press the center seam open because we've got a lot of bulk here. We've got a lot of bulk in the middle, and then again down here, we've got that angle down here. So, so this is our unit. Now that it's together, I'm going to go ahead and press this out, make 3 more so we can put our block together. And here's block 7, all laid out, ready to put together, minus our border frame A's and border frame B's. One thing I want to show you and point out is that these 2 units, I wanted to check to see how close these 2 units were in size, because these are basically our only 2 units that we made for this block. And when I lay them on top of each other, they come out perfect. So that makes me happy. I am going to remove the dog ears on these before I put them together. Those are just kind of annoying. So I've got the block laid out, and Nancy tells us to sew this block together in rows, just like we've done for previous blocks. So we're going to separate these out into rows. Once we put our 3 rows together, we want to press our seams. Let's start with the center. We always press towards a non-pieced block. It's going to lay flatter. So if this row is pressed in towards the center block, then this row and this row are the seams are going to be pressed out towards the outer edges of the row. So I'm going to go ahead and get this put into rows, and then we'll finish putting it together. 2 things before we get ready to put our block frames around our pieced block. I don't know if you noticed in the last segment of the last segment that I filmed before when I was putting these rows together, but I got all 3 rows together and I came over here to put my rows together, and I noticed this background seed fabric was upside down. As many times as I'd looked at this, I never saw it. So it happens to all of us. Just make sure before you sew your entire block together, when you have your units laid out there, look at each unit, check it with the picture in the book, make sure you have them oriented correctly, and you don't have anything flipped before you sew it together, because after it's quilted, it's a lot more difficult to fix. So I'm glad I caught that. I'll have to go back to the video and see if it showed up on there, because I honestly never saw it. The other thing is, I want to point out before I put my frames on, is I'm really happy with this block. There are a couple spots that didn't line up exact. Here's one of them. But when I stand back and look at this block, that doesn't bother me after it's quilted. I'm not going to remember that. I haven't sewn any points off, so that makes me happy. But there is one spot on this block that is going to cause me a problem if I don't do something about it before I put the frames on. And let me show you where it is. It's right along this edge. You can see that I have this last block right here sticks out, and it's really only about 1/8 of an inch. But this is going to be a problem when I put that frame on. And I can't just trim this block down to match the rest of my block, because if I do, this seam allowance right here will get too small, and then I'm going to sew the point off of this corner, and I do not want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out this seam about 3/4 of the way, about right to here. Then I'm going to pin these two edges together, and I'm going to ease in between. So I'm going to bring this block out to the edge here, because that's where it should have been. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that, and I'll be right back. So here's my edge, all nice and straight. And notice that I don't have any puckers anywhere. That's why I took it out to about here. You want to ease it over the longest distance you can. If I had only taken it out here and tried to ease it, I would have had a big pucker here. So remember, take that seam out about 3/4 of the way so that you can ease it along a longer section and you won't get any puckering. So now I'm happy, and we're going to go ahead and put our 2 block frame A's on first, and I don't care, you can put them on the sides or on the top and bottom, doesn't matter. You just want to put those on first, press them out, and then we're going to put our side block frame B's on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. One other thing worth mentioning here, and I'm not sure that I've ever said this in my previous videos, but when I get ready to put my block frames on, and this is usually the only time I do this. Normally we're going to have our smaller piece of fabric on top and sew like this. But on these blocks, I found that my frames go on much nicer and straighter if I lay my block frame down, put my block on top, and I sew with my pieced block on top, for a couple reasons. But the main one is I have a lot of seam allowances, and they're going all different directions. Some of them are open, some of them are pressed to one direction or the other. And so by having my pieced block the back of my block up, I can kind of see what's happening here, and I want to make sure that I get them. And I notice here, this one should have been pressed. This one had started to be pressed open, and I just stitched it down. So I'm going to pick that right there. I'm going to flatten that back out and just press that down. So I missed that one, but otherwise, I don't pin this block frame. I kind of lay it on here and just make sure that as I'm stitching down, it's flat, because then it's going to push all the bubbles out, or the discrepancies out. And remember that these block frames are cut longer than our side so that we can trim it down and get a perfect width. So I'm going to fix that, press, and we'll be back here to put our last 2 frames on. Okay, last 2 block frames going on, and I'll give it one last press and we'll be done. Here's block 7 with our block frames on, and I did one final press and left it on the ironing board to cool before I moved it, and you can see that it's lying perfectly flat. So if you don't have a really nice iron with that has the ability to produce a lot of steam and high temperatures, you're probably not getting your blocks as flat as you can, or they could be. So I use a lot of steam and high heat, and of course we press, we don't iron, and I do a lot of pressing throughout the piecing of each block, and then I also press at the end. So I hope that you enjoy putting this block together, block purple. I think it's gorgeous. And next month we're going to be doing, making block 8, Getting to Know Green. So until next month, happy sewing, and I'll see you back here.